Hi, Redeemer. What I'm going to do today is teach through this hymn called Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. We have been teaching our kids hymns, the meaning of them, like literally going through line by line and explaining them because it can be a little strange sometimes, and then singing them together. And I thought it'd be good for the church because some of these lyrics can be a little confusing. And if you've been around a long time or done the work to research, or maybe you're just really poetically bent, you'll understand all of this. But for some of us, I'm sure there's a line or two in here that we've maybe didn't understand, or even just to slow down and linger on it. When we sing them, they go by pretty fast. So I thought it'd be good to teach some hymns. I'm going to do a few of these. This hymn is called Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. It was written in 1758 by a man named Robert Robinson. So pretty old, has some staying power. That to me means that it's has great content and some beauty. And so this is the version we sing. Sometimes you'll find slightly different versions with the lyrics a little different. This is what we sing at Redeemer. So let's just go line by line, right? So come thou fount of every blessing. The opening line is an invitation to come. We're inviting God to come into our presence, or more to let us into his presence and to make his, glory sensed, to come and meet us, to bless us and to encourage us. And this thou fount of every blessing, this is what we're calling him, right? So all through scripture and through songs, we use metaphors or analogies to refer to God that highlight part of his character. So we're calling him in this song a fount or a fountain. So a fountain is right where water bursts forth. And so water is this idea of replenishment, nourishment. And we're calling God a fountain, but he's not the fountain of just water. He's the fountain of every blessing. All right. So, and for a Christian, that's really everything that happens to you. If you recall in the story of Job, when he lost everything, he said, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. So even that great loss was a blessing from God because it was designed for Job's joy. So here, God is the fountain of every blessing. Every good thing, and even the hard things that are good things that we encounter, come from God. He's the fountain, and we're inviting him here to come into our presence. And the next thing is a prayer. We're asking him to tune our heart, tune my heart to sing thy grace. So the idea here is that, right, song, we want to sing, and song really is not about the vocal cords and about the lips. Ultimately, it's about the heart, right? Is what we're singing in line, our hearts in line with the words we're singing. And we know that we have inability to tune our hearts to the right key, right? We cannot control our hearts. God's the one that controls the heart of man. And so we're asking him to do a great work, to tune our hearts to sing, to get our hearts in the right condition, in the right, in the right key. And that key is the key of grace. We want to sing thy grace. That is ultimately what we praise in God, because all these blessings that he pours forth, we don't deserve, we didn't own. They are due to grace, right? And we are not in tune with that because we have blindness, we have sin, we have a sense of entitlement, we tend towards works righteousness, pride, all these things that are just contrary to grace. So we're saying, God, we want to sing to you. So come into our presence and tune our hearts. We need you to help us sing. And now he's just going to basically expound on grace, right? So streams of mercy never ceasing. That describes grace, the grace of God, right? And it ties back into this idea of the fount, the water, streams of mercy, right? So there's this water flowing forth from the fountain, and what is it? Mercy. So mercy and grace aren't technically exactly the same word, but they're used very similarly, right? This idea that God, rather than judging us and breaking us, ultimately, right, and damning us, he has mercy on us. He extends his grace towards us, and they never cease, right? So this idea of streams that, they're just running. There's this constant flowing of God's mercy toward us. And that fact that they never cease, that this mercy never ceases, calls for songs of loudest praise, right? So this idea, right, we're to sing to God. Why? Because of his streams of mercy that never cease. There's these songs that we are to, respond to and respond to loudly, right? He's saying, because of your unceasing mercy, the proper response is songs of praise, and particularly loud praise, right? Because there's a great delight and a great joy, right? But again, we struggle. Our hearts aren't in tune to that, right? So we're going to go back to God and ask him to help us. Teach me. God, teach me. Teach us to sing. Teach me some melodious sonnet. So a sonnet is, a type of song or poem, and it's set to melody. So teach me a song, basically, is what he's saying. Teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. So the flaming tongues above, it basically refers to angels, right? That we know that there's angels in his presence. And as we learned in Isaiah last week, the seraphim are called the burning ones, right? There's this idea of the angels being, or they're often referred to as the stars or the morning stars and things like that. They're equated with fire because there's a great purity, brightness, and power there. And these angels, they see God in ways that we don't currently, right? They are in his immediate presence. They're not blinded by sin. These are unfallen angels, right? And they can sing in ways that we can't. So here's our prayer, God. We want to sing. Teach us a song, a melodious sonnet. What kind of song? Well, how do the angels sing? What do they see? How do they respond, right? In Isaiah 6, they're crying out, holy, holy, holy. And it's probably in song, right? So we want to sing like that, God. That's how we want to sing. That's the loudest praise that we want to sing, not just man's praise, blinded by sin, but we want breakthrough and give us a revelation of this melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount, I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. So here's just an exclamation of praise. And what are we praising? A mount, a firm, fixed foundation, right? There's a mount or a mountain that's something that we can depend on, that's immovable. Now, ultimately on earth, these things are movable, right? All these metaphors break down. But the mount, calls forth this idea of this strong, solid, immovable force. And he says, I'm fixed upon it, right? So there's this safety, this security, this invincible joy, right? And what is that mount? It's the mount of God's redeeming love, mount of thy redeeming love. So his security, his mountain where he's fixed and his invincible joy comes from, is God's love, right? Okay, verse 2. Here I raise my Ebenezer. So an Ebenezer is, actually, let me just read. I have a reference here that comes from really 1 Samuel 7. Samuel was a prophet and really served as a judge in Israel, and he helped lead Israel in battles against the Philistines. And basically, God gave them a great victory. And as a reminder of the great victory God gave to Israel, Samuel took a great stone and raised it as a memorial between Mizpeh and Shen. So it's locations. So there's a stone of memorial. And as he raised it, he called the name of it Ebenezer, which literally just means stone of help in Hebrew, and saying, hitherto hath the Lord helped us. This is 1 Samuel 7:12. So whenever the Israelites would look at the stone, they would remember how God had helped them. So what we're saying is God has been our help. So we're in effect raising a metaphorical stone of help, an Ebenezer, right? We're saying God has helped us, right? And there's the line, hither by thy help I've come. So we're saying, God, hither means up to here, where I am now. How have I got here? By thy help. Again, this idea of grace and mercy. So hither by thy help I've come. We're crying out and raising up. This Ebenezer is really our song, our praise, saying everything that we have, all our blessings that have brought us to the place where we are not our own. They've come by thy help, by the help of God. And so we raise this song, this Ebenezer. And I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. So there's this idea that we've been, on a pilgrimage, on a growth trajectory, and God is the one that has brought us up to where we are now through his grace and mercy and his redeeming love. And we're not home yet, right? We're going to go home, right? So how will we get there? Well, the same way we've gotten hither or here, by thy good pleasure, thy help, thy good pleasure, thy grace, thy mercy. So this is all just testament to our need for God to save us, to bring us to where we are now, and to bring us home. That's our hope. And it's going to be by his good pleasure, not by our own power. So here's the Ebenezer. Jesus sought me when a stranger, right? So it's a reminder of how God brought us to where we are. We were wandering from the fold of God, a stranger from God, right? We were a stranger wandering from the fold. The fold is basically a flock of sheep or other animals. And we were not in that flock. We were wandering. We were lost. We were strangers to God. But what did God do? Well, because he's merciful and gracious, he sent Jesus. And Jesus comes to get us. Jesus, to rescue me from danger. We're in danger of wrath, of death, of eternal lostness and darkness, judgment. He came to rescue us. And how? He interposed his precious blood. So there's the heart of the gospel, that he died for us, right? That his blood poured out for us is the sacrifice that satisfies the wrath of God. And when we believe, we are brought into the fold, right? We're brought into the fold, made clean, and bought by his precious blood and brought in. So that's praise to Jesus for doing that. Verse 3, oh, to grace. So here again, this theme, what you get the common theme here? It's God. These are praises to God for how he has worked and continues to work in us. His help, his pursuit, his rescue, his blood, his grace, his mercy, his mount, his love. This is to grace. This is the main theme of God's grace that we are praising. And he responds because he's aware of that. It says, how great a debtor. So we are in debt to that. Now, it doesn't mean we pay God anything. We can't pay him anything, but it means we are in allegiance to that. That is where our love and allegiance and mission and everything flows out of. And then he goes on to say, daily I'm constrained to be, which means every day he's constrained or compelled to be a debtor to grace. Why? Because these streams of mercy never cease. It wasn't just when Jesus saw him as a stranger, but it's actually every day, right? The scriptures say his mercies are new every morning, right? So every day he's aware of how much he's in debt to God's grace. He's constrained by that revelation, right? And now, looking forward, again, he asks God, do this, God. Let me skip here. He says, let me go here. Let thy goodness, so what's the goodness? That grace, that mercy. Let that goodness, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. So a fetter, what is that? A fetter is basically like chains or handcuffs. He's saying, let thy goodness, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. I'm prone to wander. So we'll get down here, but this idea is that he knows that just like he was wandering from the fold of God before, he's still that way. He sees the sin in his heart. He sees his temptation to idols. He sees his faithlessness. And he says, God, I want to arrive at home, right? By thy good pleasure, and it's not going to happen by my strength because I'm prone to wander, right? I have a wandering heart. So God, my prayer is that you would bind me like a fetter, right? That's very strong language, like a handcuff. And what is the handcuff? It's his goodness. The goodness and the grace is what constrains him, right? So God constrains us not against our will and not with chains, but becoming so compelling in revealing his goodness to us that we don't leave. So it's kind of like when in John 6, when Jesus is teaching and telling the crowds, you must eat my flesh and drink my blood. And they're like, what are you talking about? And they take off. And then he turns to his disciples and he says, will you leave me also? And they say, where shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. They're constrained by the goodness of his words. He's not tying them up, chaining them, but his goodness is so good that it has the force even more so of a fetter or a chain. So he's saying, God, let that be what keeps me. Reveal your goodness to me. Let me daily continue to be reminded of that and constrained, and bind my wandering heart to thee. Why? Because again, I'm prone to wander. Lord, I feel it. I'm prone to leave the God I love. I'm aware of my fecklessness. I'm aware of my faithlessness. I'm aware of my just vacillating affections. And so if this is up to me, I'm in big trouble. So God, let that not be the case. Let thy goodness bind my wandering heart to thee. I'm prone to leave the God I love. So again, just kind of repeating this idea of offering his heart to God and letting it be his hope for the journey home. Here's my heart, Lord. Right? This is the essence of who I am, my being, God, the heart that's prone to wander, the heart that needs tuned to sing. Here it is, God. I give it to you. Take it, seal it, right? There's this idea of this finality of God, sealing it for himself, emblazoning his name on it. And he says, seal it for thy courts above. Thy courts above is the presence of God, right? Home, the home we want to be at, and be in. It's in the presence of God. And he's saying, I want to be sealed and sealed to be in your presence. So there it is. That's Come Thou Fount. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Share it with your kids. And what I've found is that it's just really, obviously helpful to have us think through the content on our own and just worship, but also it's just kind of like the lesson that keeps on giving. Now every time my kids sing this or hear it, it's just packed with more meaning. So there it is. If you have suggestions on hymns you'd like to hear me teach through, I'd be glad to do it. So just let me know. All right. See you guys later.